Welcome to the Psych Ward Podcast, where we have conversations with everyday people about men. We believe that every man has an authentic version of himself. So, we're on a mission, and that mission is to find an answer to one question. What does it mean to be a man? Welcome back to the Psych Ward Podcast. We are going to talk today, and in just a second, I'm going to throw it to Mike to introduce our guest and our topic. But we're going to spend some time talking about men in athletics. It's kind of a different topic for us. I won't speak for Mike, even though I could. But I personally am not super athletic. Mike, I don't know if I ever told you, but I was a national champion in high school in a sporting event.
Really? What was it? Shot put?
No, that would have been cool. No, mine was table tennis. So.
Oh, that's cool.
Not really.
I've played you in that, and I know. Yeah, I can see it.
Oddly enough, I didn't get any scholarship offers after high school. It was kind of weird, unexpected. Anyway, so Mike, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Yeah. So our guest today is Chris West. He was a Louisville Cardinals basketball player, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but 1986 Louisville Cardinals versus Duke.
Correct.
And you guys took the championship, right?
Yes, we did.
Hold on a second. You didn't tell me he was a championship level athlete. Now I feel intimidated. Well, Mike, you just be quiet. Us national champions will talk to you.
That's right.
I think I was a city champ in 400 relay. I have a blue ribbon from that.
Guessing you weren't the anchor?
No, third, I think.
Mm.
Anyway, yeah, so it's good to have you, Chris. Also, Chris and I work together. So that's how I know Chris. And I really haven't spoken to Chris about his basketball days, other than I know that you played also in Europe after college. Is that correct?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So why don't you take us through where you were born, where you grew up, how you got into basketball, and how you ended up in being a Louisville Cardinal.
Okay, no problem. I'm from Louisville, Kentucky. Born and raised, went to high school at the great DuPont Manual High School. And how did I get in sports? Some of the conversations in my neighborhood is that my family, we were groomed to be athletes. My oldest brother is Dallas Thornton. He played at Louisville Male High School, won a high school championship there, and then went on to Kentucky Wesleyan College. And they actually won 2 national championships. And then he played a year in the ABA. And then he finished up his career 15, 16 years with the Harlem Globetrotters.
Awesome.
Wait. Hold on a second. I just got to ask. I believe that those games are fixed. Am I wrong?
I wouldn't use the word fixed. Those games are entertainment games, and they are rehearsed and staged, but fixed is not a good word. I would say pre-planned.
So it's like professional wrestling.
Yes, there you go. There you go.
All right. I had to ask.
You still have real athletes out there. You know, after I finished U of L and played a little bit of ball overseas, I did tour with a group called the Harlem Ambassadors, which were the original Harlem Globetrotters: Meadowlark Lemon, Marcus Haynes, Larry Gator Rivers, Dallas Thornton, a couple other guys that played with the original Globetrotters. And the funny thing about that, the Washington Generals did travel with us.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that either.
Yeah. Yeah. And the referees, everything. Mm-hmm.
Your brother played with Meadowlark?
Yes.
And Curly?
Yes, I have pictures with him at my house.
So I probably saw your brother play because my dad took me to see the Globetrotters when I was maybe 10, 12, somewhere in there.
Yeah. But, for me, how did I get involved in sports? I'm the youngest of 6. And growing up in my time, well, it's funny. Let me tell you something real kind of unique about my brother and I. He graduated from high school, Male High, in 1964. I was born 1964. So it's significant age difference.
Big gap.
Yes. And, when he was with the Globetrotters, didn't really see a whole lot of him in the summertime. They would come in for their annual games in Louisville. His days, his off time was really him just traveling and seeing friends. But we talked a lot on the phone, and as I got a little bit more involved in sports, my relationship, increased with him. With the Q&A questions of, what different schools, who's recruiting me, what should I look for, what are the things I need to be thinking about. I didn't play middle school basketball at the middle school I went to because it was the second year busing in Kentucky. And it was very interesting. A lot of upset, angry people. We were bused further out in the county. And my dad did not let me. I made the team. I was the only sixth grader to make the team. But when he realized that I was getting home a little bit too late, he started asking questions. And I didn't think about changing my clothes or taking a change of clothes because I would come home sweaty and I didn't tell the truth in the beginning. Said that I was just hanging out with my friends, but my system was coming straight home, getting something to eat, checking in. But I had to quit. And my first organized team was with a community program called Cabbage Patch. And Cabbage Patch was a local community center. They did a lot of outreach and sports, camping, different things like that. And that was my first team that I actually played for. And I was one of the youngest guys on the team, but I was a little tall, and I ended up starting. So it gave me a really good feel of what it was like to play organized sports. And my freshman year, entering Manual, I knew I was going to play basketball. We had a awesome year. We went undefeated. We won the city championship as a ninth grader. As a ninth grader, I dressed varsity, and I was one of the first or second guard off the bench. It really depends on the situation. Playing with some really good upperclassmen, a strong senior class. Having an undefeated season and playing varsity just really helped my confidence. I also played football. And my freshman year at Manual, I was just a guy on the team. And I think I really went out for the team because a couple of my buddies were playing. I didn't have anything to do. And yeah, you guys going to go try out? I think I went, and I made the team. I didn't play. I think I dressed maybe 3 games out of 10. But what happened that summer of the freshman year going into our sophomore year, one of my buddies, Preston Gray, he played a lot as a freshman. And, we were like, man, you got a chance to start as a sophomore. So we made a commitment to each other that summer. And the commitment was I throw him football passes, and I told him he can rough me up, beat me up in basketball, help me to stay strong and be tough. And we did that all summer. We really were committed. We showed up every day at the practice field at a certain time, and we had a system of, what we're going to run, what we're going to do. And so we go into our sophomore year. Preston's is a starting receiver as a sophomore. He's 6'5". And I was third, fourth string quarterback, and I did dress as a sophomore. And I was the guy who called the plays in, and I had all the signals down. I took it seriously. And one of the things I didn't really think about at this time, my freshman year, I did not play a lot. I didn't dress varsity a lot, but I was always the opposing team's quarterback.
Oh, in practice.
In practice. Yeah. Every day. And, so the competitiveness kicked in, and I felt like maybe I could start JV as a sophomore. And I remember the first game of the year we played Butler High School. They had just won the state championship. One of my cousins, Greg Thornton, he was All-American. He went to Michigan State. It was his senior year, and we were projected to get blown out that game. And that game, I'm on the sideline calling plays. First string quarterback couldn't get it done. Second string quarterback couldn't get it done. Third string quarterback couldn't get it done. And so I'm on the sideline just running my mouth. Coach, put me in. I can't do no worse than they're doing. I'm faster than all three of those guys. At least I can run and get a first down. Let me go in. And he put me in. And I think he was really putting me in to say,
Shut
hey,
up.
we got to shut this kid up. Yeah, yeah. And he didn't know the kind of work we put in over the summertime, right? So we get in a huddle, and the system is the play comes from the sideline from a receiver. The receiver runs the play and gives it to the quarterback. And I'm sitting there waiting, and I'm waving the receiver in, and the coach points at me. And when he points at you, that means call your own play. Well, I only knew Preston's plays. And so we get in a huddle. I was anxious. The senior guys was just giving me a hard time. Call the play. We're going to get a delay of game. And I called the play that I knew, and it was a play to Preston, and it was a 10-yard out pass. And we connected. So I just moved Preston from the right side to the left side, ran the same play on the opposite side. We connected. And, that was the start of my football career as a sophomore. I started every game that year as a sophomore. We were noticed as super sophomores, and the recruiting happened overnight. I went from being an O1 to being recruited and getting letters and being interviewed and things like that. So my sophomore year in football was a breakout year for me, and I felt like I was going to be a starter on the varsity basketball team, and I was. And it was a neighborhood school where everyone in the same neighborhood went to the same school, so we all played together at the park, so we knew each other. And by my junior year, I was being recruited from all different types of major Division Ones for basketball and football. My senior year, Preston and I were top 50 recruits in the country. We had an NCAA agent assigned to us to keep us out of trouble and to understand the do's and don'ts, and it was pretty cool. Guys showing up in a suit, shirt and tie, wanted to talk to you. Had to meet our family, so and it was even more exciting because I was being recruited in both sports, basketball and football. I came out of high school in 82. So from 1980, 81, 82, I was being recruited. And I was being recruited by high-level football programs. Tennessee, they was 1 and 2 nationally. Um, I spent a lot of time at Purdue University in West Lafayette, Indiana. Georgia recruited me. Notre Dame, UCLA, of course, Kentucky, of course, Louisville. Um, and I was also getting the same type of energy in basketball. So I told, the recruiters that I was going to wait till after my basketball season to make a decision. And football, it was either Tennessee or Michigan State or Purdue. And I spent more time at Purdue and Tennessee. Preston ended up signing with Michigan State. My cousin was there. We had a couple guys there from the Louisville area. Sherman Lewis was a coach there at Michigan State. He's also from Louisville, went to Manual High School. So it was a connection. And basketball recruiting picked up quite heavily for me, to where Louisville was recruiting me, IU, Bobby Knight, Sonny Smith at Auburn.
Bobby
Hugh
Knight
Durham
was
at Georgia.
Indiana.
Yes.
IU.
Come on, man.
And
Mike. It's Bobby Knight, man. throwing chairs and cussing out refs.
Yep.
And yeah, so after my senior year for basketball, I was kind of leaning more towards basketball because of this. In 1982, you didn't see a whole lot of African American quarterbacks in the major programs. And I was getting some of, hey, you'll be a great free safety. I told one school, I only have 4 interceptions on the season. I don't even know how to tackle. I got a call from Barry Swisher in Oklahoma, told me that I was a great fit for their program. He's would like for me to take a visit. And I've been watching J.C. Watts run the option for the last 2, 3 years, and we ran a pro style offense. We passed probably 75% or 80% of the time during the season. So, and I did have Tennessee, Purdue, those schools talking quarterback, but it was, I did sense that, there's a chance that I could be moved to a receiver or a free safety. And so I chose to play
And
last.
then you probably wouldn't play, huh?
Yeah,
If they
well,
moved
and
you.
you know how that goes when you got your own little ego, being one of the top players in the state and getting recognition. It's sort of like Lamar Jackson. That's why I love Lamar, because he wasn't given the opportunities up front. He had to take what he wanted. Even though they took a loss today, I'm a big Lamar Jackson fan because he stayed true to his natural position and he's putting in the work today.
So, Chris, let me ask you about that real quick. Um, I played basketball in high school, but it was probably not at quite the same level you played at. I guess I'm kind of curious about how is your junior, senior in high school, and even moving into college. I'm guessing life was different for you than it was your peers who weren't quite as accomplished.
Yeah, keep in mind, I also had an upper hand with my big brother, Harlem Globetrotters, ABA, and all the success he had. And so when I say that we were groomed to be athletes, we were focusing on eating right. I didn't drink, didn't smoke. I don't think at the time I was cussing, got angry. I fought a lot in my neighborhood, but I did not hang out like a lot of my friends. I couldn't even play in the streets. And my friends would have a touch football game in the streets in front of my house, and I had to referee from the sideline and keep score because my dad was, you're not playing in the streets. You're not gonna. I hung out with a lot of athletes. And I think that was a big difference right there. Everyone that I hung out with were trying to go to college or trying to, do something on the next level with their sports career. And so it kind of kept me grounded.
So when you say you were groomed, you mean your dad and your friends all sort of kind of pushed you in that direction?
Yeah, yeah.
Were there other forces that did that too, like teachers, etc.?
Yeah, teachers. Actually, I was sharing a story with someone a couple weeks ago with a home ec teacher. She would always come to the games. And, when I started getting interviewed, I would always hear people say, "Oh, you spoke very well." And I was like, I spoke very well? I mean, am I not supposed to? And and this home ec teacher brought it to my attention, and this was like 1980. She called me to her office, to a room, and she had a TV set up, and she was showing a couple interviews of guys across the country, and she said, these guys are great athletes, but I want you to be different. I want you to think about what you say and how you say it, because as an athlete, you do get judged. And I knew what she was talking about.
Well, think about Michael Jordan. Like when he first joined the NBA, I mean, he had a hard time putting a sentence together.
Yes. Yes.
And you fast forward 5, 6 years, and he spoke very eloquently, and
yes,
he was easy to understand, and he was kind of a graceful speaker.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm assuming there was some coaching going on there behind the scenes.
Yeah, because I think as like I said, in football, you didn't find a whole lot of African American quarterbacks just consistently across the board.
Right.
And actually, I think there's a story coming out on John Williams, who played for the Washington Redskins and won a national championship and MVP. And I don't think he played too many games after that MVP.
Talking about Doug Williams?
Doug Williams. I keep saying John Williams. Yeah, Doug Williams.
Yeah, he kind of disappeared.
He was the guy that I was following because my oldest brother knew of him. And so I was being fed different things to look out for. And, my father always had a saying, keep your nose clean. Like, keep my nose clean. But pretty much saying, stay out of trouble, try to do the right things. Because if you have the opportunity to go to the next level, there's a lot of different boxes that you need to check off that the university is going to check off, and it really helped me.
So Chris, jump forward a second. So when you became a college basketball player, I'm guessing the whole lifestyle was different.
Yeah, it was completely different because, the University of Louisville at that time, they had just came off a national championship with Darrell Griffin in the 1980 team. And actually, people sometimes forget that they were a heroic shot away from going to the championship a year before the 1980 loss to Arkansas. U.S. Reed hit a last second shot to beat them by one. My freshman year at U of L, we went to the Final Four. And we played against players by the name of Hakeem Olajuwon, Clyde Drexler, Larry Mishaw. And we were really in control of that game. And we had two bad plays, two missed dunks that they capitalize on, and they end up beating us in the Final Four, but they end up losing to NC State, Jim Vivino, Lorenzo Charles, Derek Wittenberg, Sidney Lowe, and those guys on the last second heroic shot to win the national championship. And one of the things we did in the locker room before we came home from New Mexico, we made a promise and a pact to ourselves to get back to the Final Four to win it. And that's where a lot of things start changing because we as a unit put a focus in to do everything we needed to do to get back to a Final Four. Now, keep in mind, my freshman year, I say this all the time, I had two of the best captains I ever had in my life, Rodney and Scooter McCrae out of Mount Vernon, New York. And those guys were professionals on the college level. Coach Crum trusted those guys enough to where he didn't have to enforce a lot of things. And it was different because things were different. We got treated differently with fairness.
Is
And
that the grandson?
yeah. It was a very good feeling. And I laugh and joke when I tell people about U of L. I said we went to bed every night with a big smile on our face, just couldn't wait to wake up the next day to do it again.
Wow, that's cool.
Because we did have a great time, and Coach Crum really helped us to make that transformation from boyhood to manhood with a professional spin on it. And I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. So we lose the Final Four my freshman year. Milt Wagner was our leader. He was our Darrell Griffin. In 85, he broke his foot. And we were so used to winning games because of Milt Wagner. When he got hurt, we didn't know how to win without him. Now, the funny thing, we won 19 games, but we didn't win 20. And you would have thought we didn't win a game. The energy that we got from the city, because we're so used to winning 20 games and going to the tournament. We didn't go in 85. Milt Wagner came back in 86. And
the fans turned on you.
Well, they did. Yeah, they held us accountable. You just couldn't go too many places in the city of Louisville without someone saying, "Hey, man, you need to. Y'all should have. Man, what y'all need to do." Because we're a college town here. We don't have any NBA sports, and it's you're either a U of L fan or a University of Kentucky Wildcat fan, and it's pretty intense. But back in those days in the '80s, the community held you accountable. And we wanted to do right. And so we applied ourselves. In 86, we did win the national championship. We beat Duke in the national championship game. I tell people this, we were 33-7 that year. And 5 of those losses, we lost to top 5 teams in the country, and we only lost by 1 or 2 points, no more than 2 points. And in our chemistry under Coach Crum, we played a lot of tough teams early in the year, so we got tested early. So by the time we got to the tournament, for us, it was just another day, another game for us because we were already battle tested.
Yeah. So what kind of made what made that team? I mean, because to beat Duke was unheard of, right? What made that team so special?
Purvis Ellison, man.
We just don't credit one person because we had 15 players on the team. And if you were to come to our practices, the competitiveness never changed. It was always high level of competing. Like I said, Coach Crum was a master at his craft. We would have practices where we would work on different scenarios. We're down 3 points with 3 minutes left. He had a game plan. We would always execute the game plan. We knew who were going to take last second shots in every game, and that was Milt Wagner. Milt Wagner, I don't know how many games he won for us. Even if someone was having a great night, it was the last second shot, Wag was going to be the first person. And then now here's something else unique, Eric. That championship team, we had 7 freshmen on the team.
Wow.
Never Nervous Purvis was one.
Yep.
Tony Kimbrough was a Super 5 All-American. Kenny Payne, Super 5 All-American.
Kenny Payne.
And we had a lot of All-Americans, a lot of All-States. And so it just made the competition that much great in every position. It was just Coach Crum did a great job. We bought in and we held each other accountable. Now we were a team like this, Mike. If you're not getting it done, somebody's going to say something to you.
Accountability.
Yeah, as great of a shooter that Milt Wagner was, but he didn't never shoot us out of a game. Heck, sometimes we would come to practice, have a argument with someone, and I remember Kevin Walls came to town. He was Super 5 All-American. Kevin and I was going back and forth, doing what kids do, just going hard. And I said, well, I'll see you at practice. The next day in practice, we go to Coach Crum. Hey, Coach, if it's a little intense, let it go. I got to show Kevin that he can't score 80 on anyone from Louisville, Kentucky, only in New Jersey. And, that kind of fun competition. And after that, I just talked to Kevin a couple weeks ago. We're just tight as we could be because of the energy and the atmosphere that we had at the University of Louisville.
Chris, one of the questions that I wanted to ask you, it basically revolves around how being an athlete, whether collegiate or professional, how it changes you as a man. And let me tell you why I'm asking. Through my job, I had the opportunity to spend some time with Dion Thomas from University of Illinois. He played back in the early 90s. He's the all-time leading scorer for U of I, and now he actually calls their games, which is pretty cool. And he's a great guy. And what's funny is, he said, I obviously been very professionally successful in my family. We live in a really large, nice home, and we have this really expensive furniture. And my kids are always giving me a hard time, asking me, Dad, why are you always sitting on the floor? And he says it's just one of those things that just never really changed about him, and it's part of it is just sort of an ingrained fear, maybe, but some of it is just kind of staying true to who he was as a child now that he's a man. So I guess my question is, do you think you changed as a man as a result of being successful and being an athlete, and did it change you as a person or as a man in particular?
Oh, for sure. My kids, I have a son, I have a daughter, and they both played sports. My daughter was an 8th grader starting varsity for one of the top local high schools here in Louisville. And all I could give them is what I had to offer. And that was a lot of what I learned from my family growing up. But a lot of it when it comes to sports is how Coach Crum allowed us to be ourselves, but grow, but gave us enough confidence where we were not afraid to take chances in life. I see myself, even my office that I run here with the Geo group, I tell people right off the bat, as good as anyone is, they still need coaching. There's still room to grow. I constantly evaluate myself, my marriage, as a family man, because I did that as an athlete. One of the things my brother told me I should do, regardless how well you played in your game, ask yourself 3 questions. Did you do everything you can do to help your team win? Did you do everything in your power to be the best player on the floor? Did you do everything in your power to allow your team to be the best team on the floor? And being able to give yourself true feedback allows you to grow and expand and take on more. And I think, that's how I live my life, is just trying to find ways to win. I try to help as many people as I can. I tell my staff and even my participants at work, I'm in this field because there was a lot of opportunities that was given to me. People gave me opportunities for second chances. And I think that's why I do what I do. But, because, I grew up very poor. I grew up in the West End of Louisville, but, trouble wasn't anything that I wanted to be a part of. Hurting people wasn't anything that interests me, and it was just growing and being happy and strong. And I like the fact that people respect me for who I am and what I've done.
Chris, you talked about coaching, and you said you do a lot of coaching in your work now, and that concept intrigues me. And let me tell you why. So I'm, besides being a nonprofit administrator, I'm also a therapist, and I do a lot of relationship counseling. And I always tell people the work I do with couples is less therapy and probably more coaching. Relationship counseling, it's hard to be really therapeutic in the traditional sense there. It's really about helping people find out where they're struggling and why, and set goals and learn the skills and do the things they need to do to get there. And I find and it's not that I'm any marriage expert. I've made the biggest and the smallest mistakes in my marriage, and some of them lots of times. But I also find myself bringing a lot of my marriage, my life into relationship counseling when I do it. And I find myself saying a lot of times, hey, don't make this mistake that I made. I see where you're headed with this. And at the same time, or other times, saying something like, hey, let me show you how to get to where you want to get. Not that I'm the expert, but I've been there, done that, and I might be able to save you a little bit of time and a little bit of heartache. Is that the same kind of thing you're talking about in your work?
Yes. I look at a resume and I see a lot of social work, psychology, sociology, different, they have the education, but working in our field, as Mike know, it's what kind of skill set, what concepts do you have to help you? It's like one good training that we take, motivational interviewing. If you don't have these type of skills and concepts, you can find yourself emotionally charged by the person sitting in front across your desk because they're going through it. Or you can find yourself a little too lenient because the person has had struggles. And, when a young guy tells me that, you don't know what it's like to grow up without a father. If my father wasn't here, I wouldn't have made these mistakes. I don't let that slide because you still have choice. I have a piece in my orientation where I talk about resentments and, because some of our kids are angry. They're angry at their mothers or fathers within their life. Mother was too hard or they didn't give them enough. And it's important to understand that, generationally, maybe not everyone was giving enough for everyone to have everything, but at least you had something. And then I slow it down and say this to my participants, because all our participants are felons and some have served jail time, penitentiary time. I ask them to think about their hurt and pain that they've had because of parents that was not there or could not give them what they felt they needed. And I ask them to think about their own self. When you're spending time in a jail or a penitentiary, how can you parent? And so now that you have these opportunities to correct your wrong with some levels of freedom, why wouldn't you go for it? And it's just opening people's eyes. I just think coaching can open someone's eyes to see things differently. And like you said, let me coach you to help you because I can see you walking down an avenue that I once took without the knowledge of what I have to offer you today.
You take that sort of coaching approach with your staff. And so can you talk about how maybe the experience you had playing for Denny Crum, the experience you had with your teammates, how that kind of influences the way you run your office?
We were just at a conference. We was talking about the difference between management and leader, and being a manager and being a leader. I look at it like this: if I'm not in the trenches with these guys, it's kind of hard for me to coach and hold them accountable if I don't know what they're going through. And that's one of the things that I'm going to meet them where they're at, and I'm going to grind the same way they're grinding, but we're also going to try to take it to the next level. of with the coaching, and then as a leader, you look at people's strengths and weaknesses, and that was one of the things that I've learned in sports. Everyone brings something to the table.
So that accountability piece, like starting with your dad and moving into coaches, and now you've carried that forward into the work that you do with men who are felons.
I remember I was at a blue chip camp. Michael Jordan was there. Patrick Ewing was there. In my neighborhood, this is like my junior year in high school. And my neighborhood told me to represent us. Well, I went in with mean mugging, being tough, not smiling. And one of the coaches said, "Hey, man, you see that guy right there? He's projected to be one of the top players of the country. He's having a great time. Why don't you relax and have a good time? Have fun with this." And I was taking it so seriously, I wasn't having fun. When I saw Michael Jordan smacking cards down, talking and having a good time, I said, I'm going to try it. And I try to live my life like that by, when you encounter something that's uncomfortable, you find a solution to be comfortable. We was at a conference. They was talking about most people live in a comfort zone, and there's no growth in a comfort zone. As a professional, we want to continue to change and grow and not live in our comfort zone, because when you're in the growth zone, it's very uncomfortable. And it's just helping people to feel open-minded enough to take chances to grow, because not everyone is up for growth, even though we say we are.
I was going to ask you about the after championship party, but I think we'll skip that because you probably can't talk about that too much.
No, I can't. I sent some documents one day about that one.
So you went into, you played in Europe, and then talk about that a little bit. And then how did you end up in the work you're doing now?
I played overseas. I played in South America for a year. I played in Mexico. I also, one of my greatest tours were Southeast Asia, the Philippines, Taiwan, Indonesia, Saudi Arabia. And, and it was just a lot of learning and growing, even though I've had success on the college level. It's just appreciating home and realizing that, and I do realize this, that a lot of guys I grew up with were probably better ball players than me, but just didn't have the discipline, the drive, and the go get. And and one of the things you asked me about protective factors, my brother actually told the neighborhood, don't let this guy get caught up. And they didn't. If I was with guys I shouldn't have been with, his friends would correct me. And I just hold that in my life. And then I think that's why I do what I do now, because when I finished overseas, I went right back into helping people. I was working at a boys haven. It was an orphanage home. And I was meeting kids that didn't have a whole lot. They was wards of the state. And then I utilized sports to kind of draw their interest. And one kid was a success story. He was a kid that was constantly in and out of trouble. He wanted to be a basketball player. And I had to tell him, you really are not that good. Hey, man, what if we throw the football? So this kid went from being a troublemaker to starting varsity football at a local high school, Seneca High School. And I can't remember if he had any college opportunities, but it was a life-changing event for this guy, because he went from, I'm just going to do whatever I want to do, to doing what's right every day. And, and that's where I met my wife there at the Boys Haven. And, but it's just really just helping people to see that there's more that we bring to the table, but nothing is going to be given to you.
So you were done when you were done overseas. Did you go back to Louisville right away?
Yeah, I came back home and met my wife probably a couple years after I've been home, and then we started raising and building a family.
I was. So, Chris, you talked just a few minutes ago about getting out of that comfort zone. And, our podcast is all about men and what it means to be a real man. And I without using that phrase, I think Mike and I have touched on that topic some in previous episodes. And so I guess what I want to ask you is, getting out of the sports arena and just into the life arena, Why do you think so many men stay in their comfort zone? And what does it take to get out of it?
It's interesting. Um, I had my own struggles. Being a two sport guy, I heard this today. I'm 60. I heard today, man, if you would have played football, man, you would have been all pro quarterback. I don't know. I know that I chose the opportunity, and I think we're so locked in with the successes that we have. Some of us are not able to move out of them. And another thing that I talk about is being being versatile, having multiple skills, not just being an athlete, but being a good person, being a father, being a husband, being a good son, being a good person in general is how I was raised, to the point to where, you go to college. I noticed when I went to U of L, guys were playing 4 years and not getting degrees. And, my mom had a sixth grade education out of Alabama. And, and she really pushed that. And I didn't understand, why are we pushing this education? I'm good, but it's life after basketball. And that was one of the things, I have three brothers, and they really held me accountable. One of my brothers told me that, you got to make sure that you're applying yourself in a classroom, so when this is all over, you can still have a decent life. And I do know guys who were all Americans and had the world in front of them and don't have much to claim right now as a man. And I think that as an athlete, you do have those struggles. And, that's why you see some guys, you know, not giving up, staying in it too long, even coaching. Some coaches stay in the game too long when they should have retired. It's like boxing. You take a lot of shots, and as you get older, it becomes more complicated, but you still want that other win because you had a great workout the night before. And I think what you and Mike are doing is really needed and relevant in today's world more than anything, because I just choose to believe that a lot of us are in survival mode, and the way we survive pretty much determines on what we know and what we were taught coming up. And that's why we're seeing so much violence. You can look at the politics and, how is it real politics? I don't know, but we have such a confusing message that we are seeing every day in our world. And I think some people lose focus, and when you're comfortable, you like it, even though it's not the best that you have to offer, if that makes sense.
Chris, that resonates with me, and let me tell you why. When you talk about kind of sitting with your successes and just staying there and not taking the challenge of moving forward, there's a guy that I know who, when he was young, he joined the Army right out of school and ended up at West Point and did fairly well, but he didn't spend his career in the Army and came out and frankly hasn't done much since, personally or professionally. But every time you see this guy, he's going to tell you all the stories about West Point and being in the Army, and one of those guys who just can't let it go. And I've run into athletes who are like that. They just can't stop talking about that one game or that one season or whatever. And I think people do it in any profession, right? You're going to find people, and probably men more than women, who are just holding on to that past. And I suspect it is that comfort zone that you're talking about. And it's a fascinating concept that you're bringing up, that even people who maybe haven't been what we would consider successful, right? They're still living in the same neighborhood and doing the same wrong things, but it's still a comfort zone for them. And to them, maybe even staying alive, into your 20s and 30s is a success. And so they just sit there with it. And it, like, as we're sitting here talking, I got to tell you, it just makes me sad. So sorry, didn't mean to be a downer for the whole conversation.
No. Having spent time in Louisville with Chris has a lot of fans, I guess. Everywhere we go, I go with Chris. People know who he is. But Chris is so humble. Chris doesn't talk about sports at work unless you ask him. Chris talks about how to help the people in his community when we're at work. So that's how I know Chris. That's why I don't know much about this. So this was really fascinating, Chris. So thanks for joining us and sharing that stuff with us. I admire the sense of community that you have in Louisville. You have a sense of responsibility to your community, and you take that very seriously. And it shows in the way that you run your office, how you treat your staff, how you work with participants. Maybe some of that's carried forward from the sports days. I don't know, but it sounds like it's carried forward from your dad and other people that cared about you when they were growing up. Anyway, thank you for joining us.
Mike, can I do the takeaway this time? I know I don't normally.
Yeah, I was going to say that was my takeaway. So, Eric, what's yours?
So I'm going to add to yours in many ways. Chris, listening to you talk, you just kept coming back to your dad, and I think about just, obviously we don't know everything when we're just fans, watching from the sidelines and watching the interviews and all of that. But there are so many professional athletes who give so much credit to their dads. And it's interesting to me because the pattern seems to be like, you don't have to have a dad around to be a great athlete. Lots of athletes don't. But the ones like you who have that successful athletic career and then go on to do successful things and make a difference, and whether it's in business or human services or whatever the case may be, seem to be the ones who have their dad around. And it just really kind of reinforces a point that I think I've been noticing more and more the last several years. I was kind of joking, I think one of the last couple of episodes we had about, one of my daughters and a boyfriend who grew up without a dad, and, just kind of what maybe the negative effects that I perceive him having because of that. But I find more and more that men who grow up without fathers struggle in a lot of different ways. And, my dad, he was good. He was not so good. I wrote a book about him after he died, just because he was so many different kinds of dad. But more than anything else, he was there. And that's the thing that I think he did right more than anything else, was he came home from work, and sometimes he changed clothes and went to a second job, but then he came home. He always was there. So that's my takeaway from everything that you've had to said.
Well, Chris, thanks again. It's been wonderful working with you too. I know I'm parting ways with the company that Chris and I work at. So Chris, I will officially say I'm going to miss you.
I'm stealing him back. Sorry.
I really appreciate you guys having me on. Love the work you guys doing, and thank you again.
Take care, sir.
Well, thank you, Chris.